Okay, great. All right, everybody, welcome. Hello, my name is Aspen Mays, and I'm an associate professor of undergraduate photography and graduate fine arts. It's my great pleasure to welcome you today from wherever you're joining us. And on behalf of the California College of the Arts and my colleagues here, we're thrilled to celebrate the graduating seniors of the class of 2021 in presenting their BFA thesis work. I've had the honor of working with these students in some cases for several years. So poor students. It's with great pride that we're all here to witness the hard work and extraordinary resilience these artists have brought to their art. Certainly not only this year, but throughout the pursuit of their bachelor degrees. But most especially, since the pandemic began last year, these students have endured personal loss and grief and weathered sacrifices large and small to continue making their meaningful work that they have prepared to share with us. And to their families and friends and fellow students who are joining us today, thank you. Thank you for supporting the students in your lives. And one of my favorite experiences as a faculty member is getting the opportunity to meet so many of you in person at their thesis exhibitions and graduation. And so while I certainly miss that right now, I'm so glad all of you could be here with us today. And I'd like to acknowledge the photography faculty members. I know I've seen some of you in the showing up in the room, and hopefully there's more now, but I want to acknowledge Chris Johnson, the chair of the photography program, Nelson Chan, Sine Woods, Joseph Jocks, and Abner Nolan. And also I would love to extend my gratitude to Jamie Austin and Brindis, Ather's daughter, from CCA Exhibitions, whose partnership and support in creating these presentation events is most appreciated. Before I introduce our special guest respondents, I'm gonna stop reading like a zombie from my screen for a second and just look out at all of you again. I have a couple of other items to share and before our land acknowledgement and before I introduce our guest respondents. So the schedule today, each student will present for 10 minutes, followed by 10 minutes of conversation between the student and the guest respondents. You're all invited to share your affirmations and your congratulations with our student presenters via the chat. But I do want to let you know that there's not time in the agenda for an audience Q&A, but your chat, the notes that you leave for the students will be shared with them after the event. And then please keep yourselves muted during the presentations and conversations. And I will keep our event flowing from student to student so the students know that to look for my cues. And the presentations will proceed in the following order. Erin Kitade will start. Peter Lin will be next. Elaine Moreno will be after that. Howsem Huang and Ashley Ross will close out our presentations today. And before I introduce our respondents, I offer the following land acknowledgement. California College of the Arts campuses are located in Huichin and Yelamu, also known as Oakland and San Francisco, respectively, on the unceded territories of Chochenyo and Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, who have continuously lived upon this land since time immemorial. We recognize the historic discrimination and violence inflicted upon Indigenous peoples in California and the Americas, including their forced removal from ancestral lands and the deliberate and systematic destruction of their communities and culture. CCA honors Indigenous peoples, past, present, and future, here and around the world, and we wish to pay respect to local elders, including those of the lands from which you are joining us today virtually. If you are unsure whose land you are currently residing upon, we encourage you to visit native-land.ca. And last but not least, our guest respondents. Just checking the chat to make sure we're all good here. I just want to thank you both so much. Our guest respondents have graciously accepted the invitation to participate in today's events. And we're really honored to have them here and to give our students the opportunity to present their work publicly for people outside of our immediate CCA community. So Lauren Cereso is currently pursuing a master's in curatorial practice at the California College of the Arts. Prior to CCA, Lauren worked as a creative marketer for Square, and where she managed advertising, brand, and design projects for agencies and their business clients. And she holds a BA in art from Colorado College. And Erica Demon is a visual artist whose work intersects race, gender, and the hybridity of Black identity. Originally from the UK, she has lived in the States for 10 years. Demon's work has been exhibited nationally and internationally at Pier 24 Photography, the Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Film Archive, and the New Orleans Museum of Art, to name a few. Demon is represented by Anthony Meyer Fine Arts in San Francisco. Woo, a mouthful. Oh, Alice showing up in the waiting room, so great. So without further ado, Thank you all personally for being here. Erin's going to start us off. Erin, I know you're going to do a great job, and I just want to say to all the students, I'm so proud of you. It's been such an honor to work with you.
All right. Oh boy. Okay. Hi, I'm Aaron Kitade. I was born and raised in Sacramento, California, where I'm currently located as well. I've had an interest in art in really forever. My earliest memories start with watercolor painting at my grandparents' house after a long day of preschool, as well as making my own Yu-Gi-Oh cards with my older brother, who's in here as well. Thanks, Jared. Little did I know that these preschool days would follow me for the next 20 years of my life, taking classes like film photography, drawing, ceramics, digital design, all through middle school, high school, and city college as well. So because I have such a diverse background in art, I have a lot of influences and inspirations. But over the last year or so, there's been two people who have really influenced me the most, I would like to say. One of them being President Barack Obama's photographer, Pete Souza. I I was influenced by him after seeing two of his talks down in San Francisco. And what stuck with me the most was when he said, hearing, or what he said was that he always pushed to get the most access that he could in his work environment. And I think that's something that's going to stick with me for the rest of my artistic career. Another influence is Melody Cole, who's primarily a music photographer, but over the last year, he's really captured the political scene that's going on, that's been happening, capturing all the protests and even the Capitol riots you see here. And while he's capturing these moments, it's a very unbiased view from what I've taken it as. And at the same time, he's been able to capture these moments that have really spoke to what's going on right now. And their influence on me is most noticeable in this collection of work that I'll be showing now. This collection of photos that I'm showing will be of people, me photographing people who are just doing ordinary things, really, like their jobs or whatever, really. I've always been drawn to people and like just how they go about their daily lives because it's, it may seem mundane or ordinary to them, or just, just another day of like, it's just their routine, really. And I've always been drawn to that because it's an experience that I don't have, or that I probably won't experience for some time. So it's always been eye-catching to me. And it's compared to my previous work, my thesis work is very, very different because ever since the pandemic became a serious situation for us, I really had to change the way I photograph things. And with this change, come to realize that I've lost a lot of creative drive during this past year, and I feel that I've burnt out even more so than I already felt like I was prior to the pandemic. So my thesis title is A Better Future. So over the course of this pandemic, we've constantly heard questions of normalcy, questions like when will we return to normal, or what will normal be afterwards? Who knows, really? It's a crazy period of time that we're living in with everything going on. outside of our work lives and our school lives and our personal lives. The stress of the world has mentally affected us, and it seems as though that there's no end to it at all, really. It feels as though something new is being added to this list of craziness that we've experienced over the past year. And as we take it day by day, we can only hope that the next day is better than the previous one. No matter the time or place, we're all hoping for and looking towards this better future that we're searching for. As for plans after graduation, there's a lot of things that could be said for me. As I mentioned earlier, I definitely feel that I need a break from photography because that's all I've been doing for the past 3 years since I've been at CCA. But while I'm taking my break from photography, I feel that I'm going to explore and expand my creative skills and knowledge. I've always wanted to explore different fields like video or digital drawing or something of the sort. Um, but those are just a few things that I want to try out, but I'm really excited to take my time in exploring them while finding my drive and energy to start photographing again. And I want to take the time to say thank you to everyone who showed up. My professors at CCA, especially Aspen, Nelson, and Alice Shaw, who I feel that you've made the biggest impact on my time here at CCA. And I want to thank my classmates as well for all your help and support that you've given me especially over the last year since we've been on Zoom. And I want to thank my mom, my dad, and my brother who are in here as well. You guys are great. And my friends Chris, Ryan, and Sam have really helped me as well along the way. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aaron. Nice work. Thanks for sharing that. And I'm going to invite, and just as a reminder, folks, you're more than welcome to add your affirmations and congratulations to Aaron in the chat. I also want to just acknowledge Monica Bravo and Alice Shaw, who are joining us, who are also teaching the photography program. And Erica, I'm going to invite you to kick us off with a conversation.
Aaron, thank you so much for sharing your work. It's a real honor to be here with everyone and to kind of bear witness to the achievements that you have all delivered during this difficult year. And, you know, as I heard you talking and I was looking at your work, I found myself thinking that the frame had become this place of solace, that there was within the editing, within the vision that you were making, the images that you were sharing, that these were places maybe found some respite. And I started to think about the power of rest, even through the creative process and through the visions that you were presenting to us. So I found that really enjoyable, especially kind of thinking, you know, about the losses that we've been through and that kind of personal interaction that I imagine you've been so used to within your previous bodies of work. Yeah, I think that's where I want to start. I could keep going, but I feel like that is kind of like my initial kind of thinking on your works. there's kind of a swirl of thoughts that I have kind of moving around. And maybe I should talk a little bit about permission as well, because especially when you kind of were talking through your inspirations, especially Pete Souza, I actually thought about these permissions that we as photographers really need to gain, and kind of in the absence of people, that the land is what we have, and this earth, and kind of thinking about the permissions that we need and we take as we create and as we make work. And so I thought that that was very interesting, as something that kind of had come through your work with people, and also kind of moving into this more landscape driven work.
Thank you.
So to follow up on that, Erin, great work. I agree that I think your images, your photos create, for me, a space for reflection. And I think that there's a lot of power in what you've chosen to photograph and how you've distilled those ideas. Yeah, and I know that I agree. It made me think back at a lot of moments on walks during this past year, in an empty city or out in nature. And I think, finding a way to communicate some of that emotion and those feelings that are so hard to communicate, that we really don't have language for, but yet are shared. And are, I think, part of all of our health and well-being. I think you say a lot with those images. I had a question too, just about your process and your practice. So I know I've been on a lot of masked walks during the last year. But how did you get your ideas, or your inspiration? Or were you out in the city? Did you go out in the country? Were they part of class assignments or a combination?
Well, originally I started this, kind of like, because in my photos here for my thesis, there's not really a lot of people in it. So I originally had started it in, I think, the end of 2019 with my Investigations 1 class, where my final project was, I was just walking around San Francisco at the time, just photographing the lights and shadows reflecting off things, or just how the light created weird shadows. So that's how I started, and then I kind of just felt very calm during that whole process, and then I just revisited them again and just refelt that feeling I had before.
I also would love to ask a question as well, Aaron, regarding your process as well. I thought it was really interesting to kind of look at your previous work in color with people, and then kind of moving into black and white and kind of more tonal, kind of contrasty representations. And I just would love to kind of hear you talk about that creative decision.
Yeah. Personally, I tried doing integrating the color together with the black and white, but I felt that it didn't give out the same feeling for me. So I just stuck with the black and white because I felt that was the strongest for the situation.
Thank you, Erin, for your presentation. And I appreciate your vulnerability around just thinking through your work, and also your vulnerability in talking about just where you are with photography. And so I guess I wanted to ask you, and it made me think about it in relationship to the artists that you presented that you are inspired by. And you have such a wonderful sensibility too. So I'm curious if you're interested in kind of moving after the break with photography, if you're interested in moving in that direction, kind of like photographing in a political, like documenting, what's going on politically.
Yeah, I never really thought of that, but now that you mentioned it, I think it would be an interesting environment for me, because I'm not really a big politics kind of person, but I feel it would be interesting to see happen in front of me.
I have another question I would like to ask as well, just regarding this work and kind of thinking about how, in many ways, the only person in this frame is you. You are this consistent entity in the work, and I wondered if you kind of saw this maybe as a self-portrait of this time.
I don't think I saw it as a self-portrait for me. I think for me it was more just kind of regaining myself, because we just passed a year of the pandemic, really, and I don't think during the whole year I didn't think of it until like it was being mentioned that we're passing a year on it. I was like, wow, that's crazy. I've really been stuck inside for a whole year, and like none of like all the pressure. I don't know about if pressure is the right word, but that's the only way I can describe it. Like it kind of just hit me all of a sudden, and then I felt that I just needed a way to kind of calm myself down in a way.
I'm curious, have you thought about what other mediums you'd like to explore?
Yeah, I mentioned it at the end. I said video and like digital drawing. I really started my art career with drawing, so I kind of wanted to get back into that.
Well, I'm chiming back in here to congratulate you, Aaron, and to thank our everyone for our respondents for your questions and insight, and just to personally congratulate you and tell you how much I've appreciated working with you and how much I've drawn strength just from your courage and resilience. I know this hasn't been easy, and it's great to see you, bring the work forward, and we look forward to seeing what you do next. Thank you. Thanks for leading us off too. Okay, great. So Peter, I'm inviting you to queue up, and all right, get us ready.
Okay. Hello, guys. I am Hejun. I have different names. My classmates usually call me Peter, and my real name is Chuhao. But Hejun is a name that I will use in my art. Names are like phone numbers, and it is meaningful only after dialing. So you guys can call me any one of these three. And I'm currently in Guangzhou, China. Here is also where I grew up. In 2015, I went to Washington State to Gilman College to study film production. And at that time, I didn't finish my high school. Here is the photo of me in Seattle. Later, I transferred to Rochester Institute of Technology to pursue my BFA degree in photography. However, Rochester is a very cold place, which is very unfriendly to me as a Southerner. So I transferred to CCA in 2018. To be honest, I never thought I would study arts until I studied arts. I'm a 100% science student before I went to college. And the reason I chose film production as my major at the very beginning is because I make some videos at that time, and I just want to have some fun. So one day I saw photos by Chen Man and Sun Jun. Both are very top commercial photographers in China. And they are particularly good at combining the Chinese culture ideas in their photos. At that moment, I noticed that photography can also be math, and there are formulas that you can follow. So I decided to continue exploring arts to challenge myself. So this one is how Chen Man combine the Chinese culture element, the architecture in her fashion photos. And this one is how Sun Jun used the traditional Chinese painting technique in his picture. So, and this is my favorite photo book by a Chinese photographer named Moreno, A Part of My Life. This book records his life in France as an international student from 2009 and to 2012. Moreno picked hundreds of photos from his project and reorganized them into his story. I resonated strongly with this book because I'm also an international student. I share the very similar situation and what he's been through. In so many years of exploration of photography, I finally find my position. I consider myself as a recorder, a porter of life's moments instead of an artist. This is my ongoing thesis project, Window. Here is where I began. If you guys still remember, on the September 9th, 2020, the orange day. So when I woke up in the morning at 8, I saw that it was totally orange and wet outside my window. And I thought it was 8 p.m. So I took this photo without any hesitation. Then I realized that I ignored the view of my window for so long. And it also remind me of the days that I was in the boarding school. I was sent to the boarding kindergarten at my age of 4. And looking through the window was one and the only ways for me to contact with the outside world. The experience of boarding school and in the quarantine are very similar. So I started to take photos of my bedroom window. And this one is taken at about 4 a.m. in the morning. And I was taking photos throughout the fall 2020. I found that it's not just about the connection between my childhood memory and the quarantine life. It also is a reflection of my feeling, my emotion, and what I have been through. As you can see, my room started to become messy, and at that time I was feeling so depressed. And later, how it turned back to normal. And this photo was taken a month before I back to China. And this is my cat Xiaobai in the photo. I have 2 cats, and I can only bring 1 cat back. So this photo strongly reflect my emotion at that time. Yeah. Also, you guys can see how I turned my bedroom into the studio space. At the end of the 2020, I decided to go back to China. I thought the project of the window will stop because the lives go back to normal in China, and my quarantine life should be end. So I took some photos of the window in my quarantine hotel in Shanghai. I want them to as an ending of this project. So these 2 photos are the first day and night I arrived in Shanghai. However, on the January 27th, I was sent to the quarantine hospital because I showed a symptom of COVID virus. I thought I just need to do a COVID test and I should be able to go back to the hotel. So I didn't bring anything with me beside my phone and passport. I stayed in the hospital for 3 days. But at that time, I didn't know how long I need to stay there. And my cat was still in the hotel. This photo is taken about 6 p.m. And when I look out for the window, I feel exactly the same, the loneliness, the helplessness as what I feel in the boarding kindergarten. So at that moment, I decided to continue my project. People says everything will be fine and we need to stay positive. So I think that we usually ignore those unhappy experience and the memory. So this time I decided to recall all of them. And this is the last day that I'm in Shanghai. After I came back to Guangzhou, I was planning to take some photos of my kindergarten, but unfortunately, I was not able to get into I didn't get the permission to get into there to take photos. So the only thing I can do is take photos from the outside. So this is the first photo that I took, and I want to recreate this archive photos streams. And this one I took this one through the gate. Yeah. Now I can go out freely, but looking out the window has become one of my important activities daily. It seems that the quarantine experience has changed my life habits. I continue taking photos of my bedroom window. When I look through the windows, what I saw is the reflection of myself. About future, I spent 3 years in CCA to learn how to become an artist, but I'm interested in commercial photography most, and this point has never changed. I believe my unique experience and what I learned from CCA can help me a lot in pursuing commercial photography in the future. After graduation, I think I will stay in Guangzhou, and I want to become a commercial photographer and practice more on commercial skills. And at the end of this year, I will open a small photo studio in Guangzhou with a Japanese-style garden as an outdoor scene. Okay, and here's my end of presentation. So thank you for listening. Also, I want to say thank you to all the people that are helping me in the past few years. And I want to say, especially I want to say thank you, David, for helping me in this project. And also I want to say thank you to my family to supporting me all the time. Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Peter. That was great. And I love seeing the new work, and you all don't know that, but the last couple of images in there were new even to us and his classmates. So that was a nice surprise to end on. Great to see. I love that image of the playground through the bars. It was really beautiful. So Lauren, I'm going to invite you to kick us off here in conversation with Peter. Thank you.
Sure. Peter, great work. This is the first time I've gotten to look at your work, and it's really interesting. And I think that you'll have a great future in the commercial world from my experience. I also wanted to say, I think there's something really interesting in your scientific background and sort of how you think about things like experimenting or kind of recording, documenting your day and your life. And I think that there was something really interesting in the combination of all of the photos of windows together. And especially how you were talking towards the end of the presentation about how those are really reflective of either different times in your own life or different days and different feelings. And I think bodies of work like that are definitely really powerful in a commercial sense. I think a lot of photographers that work for ad agencies or elsewhere, it's always interesting to look at what they're doing sort of for their personal work as well, like that mix in your portfolio. And in terms of a question, so I wanted to hear more about the photo of the door, where you didn't have permission to come into the gate. So was that, an archived photo from earlier in your life that you're interested in revisiting and recreating, or can you talk more about the idea for that photograph?
Because actually these projects start in the fall 2020. So as I mentioned, it's connect my childhood memories and my quarantine experience. So, but I think that because for me, of course, I can see the connection there. But for all other audience, they may not able to feel the same. So so because I come back to China, so I have got a chance to go back there. So I decided just take some photos and yeah.
Hu-Jing, congratulations on what is a fantastic body of work. And again, I kind of found myself kind of swirling around in all of the photographs and kind of thinking deeply about this tension that I was feeling between the inside and out. Also kind of that kind of intimacy and the personal journey that I felt that I was on, kind of being in that space with you and kind of hearing about these different stories and different moments and different meanings for you, and kind of having learned how, you know, this window really became, you know, an important place that you hadn't recognized before. And I feel that that's a really kind of common thing that has happened during this time, is that many of us have realized that we have these things that we've often overlooked or walked past. And now kind of we've recognized that there's actually something beautiful or melancholy or all of those other kind of emotions that we may feel kind of right under our noses, and that this kind of really needs, you know, our attention and our kind of creative reflection. I think one of the questions that I had for you is my interest in kind of how often you would choose to make a photograph at the window, and what was your kind of driver, if there was one, other than you know, intuition.
About how often? So because I just take photos when I saw I think the outside view, like the color of the sky and something happened outside, I would take a photo. Like I didn't take photos of the window daily, because I think they are just, sometimes it's all the same. So I just want to show the difference. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. My question is around the windows as well. Like, if you think of it as a project or a series, and what you feel like you've learned from making the work.
I'm sorry, can you say the last thing?
What you feel you've learned from making the work.
Well, I think I never thought about this. So what I learned maybe is just getting a better understanding of myself.
In what way would you say?
Huh?
A better understanding of yourself in what way?
It's just very difficult to like say what I have learned from taking photos of the windows. Yeah. So.
It's okay. It's just something to think about, you know, maybe to think about and maybe even write about, you know. Sorry to put you on the spot there.
I'll chime in with an unfair lifeline as your teacher. I remember having lots of conversations in class with you, Peter, about feeling the differences between feeling protected by being inside and then kind of feeling confined by being inside, and then going home and having the kind of irony of not being able to enter that space that you wanted to enter. Finally, you're on the outside and you can't actually access it anymore. So maybe, I don't know, maybe there's something there too, if you want to jump from there. How's your cat doing?
My cat is sleeping next to me there. Yeah.
Yeah, who can blame it? That's its life, but also it's the middle of the night for you. So we also really appreciate you, being here with us in the middle of your nighttime. We can go ahead and transition on to the next student, unless our respondents, if there's any other final thought or question for Peter before we move on.
I did have a final thought, kind of thinking about this kind of crossover between fine art and commercial work. And I feel that especially in photography right now, that I feel that the door is really very open for those collaborations to happen. And so I would encourage you to kind of also continue to think about, your fine art practice as well as your commercial work, because often I see campaigns that I look at and I'm like, this is a replica of a fine artist's work. So I would encourage you to kind of keep mining your own experiences and other artists' experiences as you kind of progress to the commercial field.
Yeah, actually, I have, I think this last year at that time, so I have a struggle in finance and commercial. I've been thinking a lot, so I think they are not you can like, I think finance in commercial is what make your commercial work unique in there. Yeah, to commercial, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Eric and Lauren and tonight. And thank you so much, Peter. It's been such a pleasure to work with you. And thanks for sharing so much about your journey too. I feel like as your teacher and your classmates, we got to really experience this world with you. And I feel like we all really, I know personally, I really identified with what you were working on in some ways, and in other ways, you were really telling your unique story. And anyway, I just really appreciate your vulnerability and sharing all of that. And I look forward to following your career. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. I know we miss the applause, don't we? So without further ado, Elaine Moreno, go ahead and cue yourself up. Felicidades, suerte. You don't need it, but you'll be great. And go ahead and go for it.
Cool, thank you. 1 second. I'm really nervous. I have no idea why. It just like all hit me at once. But cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Elaine Moreno. I am a Mexican-American Bay Area native artist. I am very happy to be here sharing my work with you today. So growing up in the Bay Area, I was constantly surrounded by diversity, arts, music, spirituality, and hella beautiful cultures. But really, I fell in love with the arts because of my parents, ultimately inspiring me to use photography as a tool to navigate through my thoughts and emotions and becoming the artist that I am today. Oops, there you go. Some of my major influences for the work that I make comes from my Mexican-American culture, my family, music, and photographers like you see on the screen, Graciela Iturbide, Larry Sultan, and Dalia Goches. And with that being said, I want to dedicate my thesis project to my parents, Gloria and Sergio Moreno, also known as Mami y Papi, which is the title of this project. Within the fraught contemporary context of immigration and the misconceptions about immigrant lives being a threat to society in the United States, this project narrates the story of my parents' life in America and their decision to go back to Mexico. As the youngest of 3, they have asked me to consider buying their home in San Pablo, here in the Bay Area. I haven't stopped thinking about how this is going to change my future, like where will I end up or what I'll do without them so close to me, because ultimately this is the last time that I will ever live with them. Growing up, witnessing their lives, I came to realize that I had never seen or understood their struggles until a few years ago. And it inspired me to share this defining experience with as many people as possible. I grew more curious as to why they want to go back to Mexico. I was asking questions like, what is missing here in America? Was this always their plan? So then I began having conversations with my parents about the past and the future. It allowed me to put into perspective what they went through as a young and newly married couple who migrated with their young children to San Francisco from Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. My dad says, you can read on the screen. Papi dice, aunque estuve aquí por muchos años, todo el tiempo pensaba en estar ahí, pues porque yo crecí allá. Fui a la escuela, fui parte de la universidad. Mis amistades con mi mamá, mis hermanas, yo tenía todo allá. During their time apart, Mommy and Papi shared their lives through photographs and letters. Like the one you see here on the screen, my mom shares, your precious family soaks the sun at the hotel pool. Or like this one, where Papi shows off his new English skills. Getting to know each parent individually and understanding their lives has allowed me to grow as a young woman and artist. Mami dice, es difícil la decisión otra vez volver a empezar en tu país. Creo que en mi caso, tengo más años de vivir aquí que en México porque me vine muy joven. Making this work requires that I proceed through the intimate and emotional process of unpacking truths, secrets, and revelations that our family has developed as they make their plans to leave California. This project reveals a window into a personal story that breaks down my parents' American dream as it genuinely exists, of providing better opportunities for me, my siblings, and grandmothers. So Papi migrated alone without Mommy and my older siblings in order to establish a foundation for his family. He worked so hard for about 2 years, made enough money to go back, and brought the rest of the family to San Francisco. With their aspirations realized, both Mommy and Papi worked tirelessly to provide and establish the life that they imagined. Papi says, the reason I want to go back is because I think the time has come. I have been here for more than 30 years, working nonstop together with my wife, working to raise money, to cover the expenses of my children. And I think I got tired. Mommy says, this country has given us the blessing of being able to overcome in many occasions. The blessings we received have also been shared by our family, having the ability to help out other friends and family in Mexico too. My parents' decision to move back to Mexico was a shock, but this project has forced me to come to terms with how I define home. Appreciating the moments we all share living together has been getting heavier as I come to realize how much they've done to encourage me to pursue my dreams and establish my life. I'm trying not to cry. My parents care so much about everything and everyone around them that it was hard to imagine them uprooting the life they've built here. I feel so privileged to have and had their support for so long. Sorry. But it's becoming more obvious why they are ready to move on to the next chapter of their life together. I feel so privileged to have their support for so long. And I'm just really, really happy. Sorry, guys, I need a second. So, of course, I selfishly want them to stay because change is hard for everyone involved. I mean, look at how cute they are. But after decades of perseverance, it is time for them to think about themselves. And I want to leave you all with this last note. My dad says, con ciertas cosas que pues nos dolía, ¿verdad? Pero juntamos creo que lo suficiente como para hacer nuestro hogar en México y vivir el tiempo que Dios quiera de nuestra vejez. And so ultimately, I envision this project unfolding into several chapters, like in the form of a book you see here. or like a 3-part series where I plan to document my family in our shared home in California, their move, but also ultimately when they're in Mexico in their new home. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, thank you so much, Elaine. It's so moving. I was very emotional, and glad you had more time in your presentation, so I didn't have to try to talk and not cry at the same time also. But I think, for those of you joining us who aren't CCA students, you just see how fortunate we are, I think, from the presentation so far to just have such incredible work and stories being told. And I've learned so much from you, Elaine. It's been such a pleasure to work with you. And you did great. If that was you nervous, then I don't want to see you not nervous. So let's open it up. You want to stop your share, and I'll invite, I think Erica, I'll invite you to start us off. Thank you.
Elaine, thank you so much for inviting us into your family story and for giving us the permission to be in space with your parents. And I just wanted to say that I really felt the tenderness in the images and as you narrated through the presentation. The first few images, as a perspective, I was looking up to your parents and up to those spiritual hangings on the wall of the cross. And I really kind of felt grounded in how you really see your parents, as people that you really kind of look up to and have inspired you to become the person that you are. There's a couple of other images as well that I really kind of grasped onto. There was a moment where you were talking about, their work ethic and how tirelessly they worked. And then we had this image of the hammock, and I was like, how beautiful a tension there is just there that, as immigrants, there's this expectation of productivity and work, and yet there is something so powerful in rest. And rest is something that really isn't really granted to many immigrants as we come here, because we are trying to make something better for ourselves and for our families. So I really kind of felt some really beautiful tensions in the work, and it kind of made me think of my own family. And I went to Stuart Hall and these notions of in-betweenness and what it means to belong. And I thought it was so successful. Yeah, I was really blown away. I think as well, I want to keep going. There was some more images where, I really felt this kind of traditional Americana scene happening, with your dad watering the grass and with this guitar. And I was like, this tension of kind of having this visual of almost assimilation, but there being this, real kind of a sentiment of never truly belonging and having another place that they truly wanted to be back in. And so I thought it was so successful. And I wanted to maybe ask a question about kind of this growth that has happened kind of in understanding your parents' story. And I often think about how parents kind of hold and protect certain stories to kind of protect children and to kind of not give them the burden. And I just wondered how you do you see them in a different way? Or just, I'd love to hear you talk more about kind of as you've learned about some of the stories that you've kind of decided to ask and hear.
Yeah, thank you for the amazing feedback you've given me. I appreciate it. But to answer your question, I would say that I think also just especially during this time, during quarantine, it has been really, really helpful just being able to get to know each parent a little bit more. I think just like I was always in school, working, I was having full-time jobs all the time. Like I've been in school for quite a while. And so I never really had the opportunity to get to know them as I got older, because as the youngest of 3, and they were ministers in churches. Like we were constantly in church, like 5 days out the week. So I was with them all the time until I was like 18. And basically when I turned 18, I started to branch out a little bit more and learn about art and learn about who I am. And I think getting to know them again has just been different, right? It's been different, but it's been really helpful because they're also teaching me how to, like, you know, buy a house and like make bigger, like learn how to make decisions that are ultimately going to affect my future, and putting myself in the same shoes as like when they were starting to build their life together. They were a lot younger, so there is a big difference in that, but yeah, it's been amazing.
I really appreciate what Erica said, and your work is just stunning. I am also from the Bay, or I live in the Bay Area. I have been here long enough to think it's home, and looking at even some of the images outside of your presentation, I was just struck, places I've seen many times, seeing it through you and through your work was just wonderful. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to add that I think you have such a poignancy in how you're telling the story, and these domestic scenes. I mean, I couldn't stop looking. I couldn't take my eyes away, noticing new details and relationships within your compositions. And I think that layering and that just sophistication to those relationships is a really nice pair. I'm sorry for my cat. Is a really nice pair with your storytelling, and how, no matter how close we can be to one another, there's, always things we're learning, and the relationship between your parents and between you and them. And I can't wait to continue to follow your work and see how that evolves.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate it.
I actually have another question for you, Elaine. I wondered about whether you had any thoughts around kind of continuing the project as your parents moved back home, and as someone who has a parent from, my mum is from Jamaica and moved to the UK. There's this relationship with Jamaica that I feel as an individual I kind of need to think about and foster. And I wondered whether that was something you were thinking about, and I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, definitely. So it's the house. If I'm not able to purchase the house, basically they're trying to sell it as soon as I graduate, like next month. So all of this is happening very, very quickly, but it's something we've talked about for like the last 2 years when I started this project. And so, yeah, I've been thinking about and planning out and visualizing me being there and like finally seeing them build their house together. Like I am hoping that I have the opportunity to follow them through the move and like really be side by side to them. So they're not getting rid of me quite yet, right? I think I can still work on this for another year. And my relationship with Mexico, I mean, I grew up going there like every summer since I was like 5. And so I have a big connection to their home as well. And just being able to take in the history of my Mexican American culture, I think is also going to be something part of my relationship with my parents and just this project as it evolves.
I'm chiming in here. We have a little bit of time left if Lauren or Erica have other thoughts to share. Elaine, I think it went so well with your presentation. I really enjoyed listening to you speak. I think that this is also insider information as the teacher, but Elaine's been working on different ways to combine the interviews and truly bring in the voice of her parents. Also to Elaine's family, if you're in this Zoom, thank you so much. I also feel this, was really looking forward to the experience of meeting you all someday in person, because I feel like we've really, as a class, we've really gotten to know your stories, and it's been such an honor from the side. But Elaine, I just want to say I think it worked really well to have you speak in their voices. I thought that was a really nice part of your presentation. But before I talk too much, because you heard my voice so much, if Erica or Lauren has anything to add.
I mean, I think I was just struck by the tenderness of it all, and I think that the composition of the photographs were so beautiful and poignant, and there were so many, as you shared your inspirations, I felt like I could really see those kind of coming through the work, and yet it was, through your own lens, through your own voice and the voice of your family. And so I think it was so powerful. And I mean, I guess I probably would ask a question on your creative decision to kind of use black and white as opposed to color. I noticed that there was one color image in there. But I'm kind of always interested in that decision.
Yeah, it started off with black and white, just with the class, and it just has slowly evolved to photographing in color and photographing digitally. Like I'm kind of working on an expansion of this project for another class, and so again, just like I want to be able to incorporate everything that I have. And so black and white is just, I've always had, it's my first love, essentially, with photography is black and white. So I think I just have more images in black and white right now, but I have evolved to photographing in color, and yeah, I mean, I want to kind of combine it all. I love it all.
And I think you can. I don't think that it's limited to like either or. I think that, as your body of work grows and as you kind of add to it, I think there's enough room and space for everything in terms of color. So yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Elaine. Wonderful work. And Howsem, how are you feeling? You ready to go?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, go for it.
Thank you. Thank you, Aspen. And thank you, Elaine, for sharing us such a wonderful work. And also everyone before my presentation. And I'm going to share my screen. And here's my presentation. And hi, everyone. I'm Howsem Huang, or Howsem Wong, if you pronounce my name in Cantonese, or Wong Howsem in Cantonese. I major in both photography and graphic design, and at California College of the Arts. I used to only major in graphic design, but I was so obsessed with photography. So here I am. I finally end up talking here, presenting my photo senior projects. Let's start a little bit of my background. Like many international students at CCA, I've made the same decision, not only to study and live thousands of miles away from home, but to study arts. I was born in Guangzhou, born and raised in Guangzhou, or Canton City, aka Guangzhou. I came from the same city as Peter, and it's a historical and modern city in South China, next to Hong Kong. And I wasn't aware of what Cantonese meant when I was growing up there until I traveled overseas and moved to the Bay. And suddenly everything I've encountered reminded me of who I was, like an 80-year-old copy of National Geographic magazine, or people who spoke in Cantonese on streets. Then I realized my identity is a thing. So my photographic works have become kind of like a playground of experimenting how to recognize my identity as a Cantonese Chinese. And this is a self-project that I did when I was junior year. And I also did this series, The Two Cities. And they are like an extension to my self-projects I just showed. And I photographed them in the lighting studio, and each pictures contains a imported merchandise from South China. I'm going to talk a little bit about of my influences. I studied Taryn Simon's work, Contraband, in which she used this forensic photography to document these illegal goods at the US custom. I was amazed by how much information and how many stories can this minimalistic photograph can tell. Echoing back my lighting studio work I just showed, learning her works really helps me to think about and frame my works. In studying art in the US, our curriculum is pretty much Eurocentric. I didn't get many chances to study Asian contemporary art, so I recently started to learn about photography in an Asian context. Japanese photography is a fresh input to my creativity because it constantly questions and challenges photography as a medium. There are definitely more influences that have shaped my work and my perception of photography. But I think more importantly, a more significant impact is the reality, and which it is also the essential elements in photography. I participated in the first major rally of the anti-extradition bill movement in Hong Kong back in 2019. And this is one of the most significant influences to my work and also myself. And after I went back here, I also participated in several rallies and protests in San Francisco. And I'm curious about what those social movements represent here in a Western perspective and the ones in East Asia. With all this question, I created this project called Intertwine. I wanted to make sense of these protests and rallies that I've joined. In this body of work, I'm asking, is there an ultimate answer to the social unrest? These photographs are from 3 different events: the Hong Kong anti-extradition bill protest, Women's March San Francisco in 2020, and a rally at SF Chinatown demonstrating anti-Asian attacks in San Francisco and New York back in last September. I also want to spend some time to express my anger to what happened in Atlanta. On March 16, 6 Asian women were killed in squad shooting, among 8 victims. I found so many similar things between protests in these 2 places, marching on Main Street, rallies and protesting signages. And all these elements are surprisingly alike, and of course not to mention the MS bill during the protest. But simultaneously, I also noticed many different elements and ideologies among them. For example, the Chinese flag, which means drastically different in Hong Kong and than here. And of course, there's Trump's image. I laser printed this image and blow them up to reveal the dots. And this seems to represent the complexity, which is the similarities and differences on the iconography level. And more importantly, when they overlap each other, you can almost find a similar power which you sense during a protest. The next work I'm going to show is As I Walk Down on Stockton Street. And this series features photographs at San Francisco Chinatown from 2017 to 2021. I've been photographing San Francisco Chinatown since I moved here. In Cantonese and Toisanese are the 2 main languages spoken in Chinatown, as well as my hometown. So it makes me feel like I'm walking on the street back in Canton City. So I started to actively photograph here. And I photographed gift shop, civil ballets, markets, and not only these life scenes, I also tried to look for objects that loaded with politics and ideologies like flag and protest. My interest of talking about politics are well satisfied here because I didn't get many chance to talk about this stuff back in mainland China. Then I also think about my identity and my relationship with Chinatown in a Western context. and I realized I was also an outsider here. And one day I was photographing at Chinatown as always, and I heard someone speaking in Cantonese saying, 影咩影？人哋咁慘仲影? And she meant, what you're photographing at? She's poor and struggling. Why are you shooting her? So as I'm working on my photograph sequence, I'm rethinking my role as a Cantonese speaking person, as well as a photographer who has been taking pictures here like an invader. Perhaps these photographs only shows my intimate and ambiguous relationship between with SF Chinatown, but I'm also questioning photography as an art-making approach. Is it invasive? And who get to tell whose stories? And besides, I also think these photographs will give everyone a fresh perspective to see SF Chinatown through my own lens. Just like reading a bilingual article, readers will read differently depending on which translation they're reading. So I think it's a great way to let people sense this beautiful complexity that lives within Chinatown. And move on to my future plan. Like many young artists, especially international students like me, who don't have much access and connection either here or in their country. I'm hoping more people can see my work, of course. So for the projects I just presented, I'm making them into books. And this is the books for Intertwine that I made at the beginning of this year. And also designing a book for my project, my Chinatown project. And besides that, I'm hoping museums and galleries will open up soon for more opportunities for artists who are presenting today, and including me, of course. And last, I want to thank my family who struggle a lot supporting me financially and emotionally. And also, I want to thank my beloved professors, Aspen Mays and Nelson Chen, for tutoring me to finish my senior project. And of course, thank you all for listening my presentation.
Oh, thank you so much, Howsem. You guys are really challenging the teachers today. I feel like it's a very emotional time. It's just so wonderful to see your work and to see all of you shining in this way. Wonderful presentation, and really appreciate, I think you've changed it even since you practiced it. It's so refined, your ability to reflect on your experience. It's really powerful. Thank you, Howsem. I'm going to invite Lauren to go ahead and start us off.
Great work, Howsem.
Thank you.
I lived in San Francisco Chinatown for 6 or 7 years, and also enjoyed walking around. And so I think the way that you're thinking about all the context around your practice of photographing, that maturity, I think, is really refreshing to, be thinking about the power politics involved and the associations, as well as, your unique associations with, different objects and places. I wanted to ask, I think your overlapping photos and intertwined, I think the way that you're combining your photography practice and bookmaking or other graphic design is really unique. And I'm curious, do you have ideas for where you want to take that combined practice next?
Yeah, I will also, I think the main kind of the battlefield for me to implement these two skills are in bookmaking. And of course, I'm learning a lot of curatorial stuff. So my direction for the future will be in the publishing industry, or maybe curatorial area.
I think you could make some great exhibitions and publications. You have a great foundation.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your project. I I really enjoyed kind of looking and kind of thinking about how I felt that you were really kind of using the camera, using the lens as this kind of tool of decolonizing, kind of decolonizing these objects that may be powerful and loaded, and also kind of thinking about yourself and your own body as a creative person kind of in space. I thought that was really powerful. There was a word that you used at the beginning, playground, and I thought it was such an interesting tension to feel that there was something so kind of joyful as well as important in kind of how you're viewing photography. And so I really, really appreciated that. And it kind of made me think about the birth of street photography as something that has kind of, attempted to be owned by the states, but really kind of, there is this story before, and that, it did come from, Japanese artists, and how really so much of everything is colonized. And I just really enjoyed, the maturity and the approach and the way that you're talking about the work and photography. In the intertwined work, I kind of found myself thinking about this space in between the overlap. And I know that, the images are kind of pressed together, but I actually started thinking about what this would look like and could look like as an installation. And if there was space, what would that space be, and how could we occupy it? How could we belong in that space, or would we be invading that space? And I just found myself swirling around. And so I guess my question is, like, have you, obviously in quarantine, I kind of wanted to see if you'd thought about how potentially this would exist in a gallery space, as and when we can get back to that place.
Yeah, thank you for the feedback, and the question is really good, because I was thinking how to present these projects, at least into a physical object. So during quarantine, everyone kind of doesn't have much access to a physical space. So that's the main reason I make this into the book. And I also want the images to be big and to be large. So for the book design, let me show this book real quick. So I made this cover and can be unfolded to a 12 by 24 inches print. So that's also what I imagine this project will be in a gallery space, which is big and large, and people can go really close to see the dots, and also be far away from the paper to see the whole images.
Wow. Well, I hope we can get back into a space where that can happen, because I would really enjoy to, being able to see that in person. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I chime in for a second, if that's okay? Hi, everyone. Sorry I'm a little late to this, but Howsem, I just want to congratulate you, Tai Hoa. I think that, when you talk about Japanese photography and how that's influenced you, and, when I think about, how, our cultures overlap, from, my father also is from, the same region. I think of chi, energy, and, the thing that I think is that connects your work to a lot of the Japanese photographers that you admire so much is the fact that the visuals don't necessarily create. Of course, they're visually interesting to look at, but I think it's more so about energy. They create an energy. I think of like Takuma Nakahira, who I know that you pay attention to. The way that for him the photographs weren't as precious as much as the energy that that was created with the images that he made, right? Like for me, that's really important, and that's something that I've always seen with, especially with the intertwined work. You know, there is something simpatico there that is absolutely amazing. So yeah, like I agree. I think that, you know, I'm fortunate enough that Howsem had sent me one of those books, but I really look forward to seeing what that looks like in physical space. You know, I think back to Takuma Nakahira in 1974 when he had a performative piece at Paris Photo. He found a basement darkroom and would wheat paste silver prints onto a wall every single night while they were still wet. And then they would be weathered. You know, he would do that every night for a week. And for him, again, it wasn't about the sort of preciousness of each photograph, but of course, that exertion of energy. And so, yeah, I really look forward to seeing how you continue to manifest that.
Thank you.
Yeah, congrats.
Howsem, is there anywhere you think you might, so we could get one of your books? Have you thought about that?
The answer is not yet. I haven't thought fully about how to get my books out of the world, but I will. That's my next step, and I didn't mention it in my presentation, but that's definitely the next step for me to for more people to get to know more about my works and myself.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, we're just about kind of coming up on time for this conversation. If Lauren or Erica, if you have any kind of final thoughts or questions, probably have time for one more, but otherwise we can get Ashley started in just a moment.
I think I just wanted to also acknowledge your reference to the Atlanta murders and to kind of stand in solidarity against the heinous crimes that are happening to the Asian community. And I just didn't want to kind of finish this conversation without acknowledging that. So thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Thanks for bringing that forward. And I echo your sentiments, and Howsem, thanks for bringing that into your presentation as well. It's been such an honor to work with you. Congratulations again, and thank you so much. And you guys, I don't know if the students, if you all have had a chance to kind of scan through the chat, it's just gonna be such a present to unwrap later. It's wonderful. Thank you everyone who's participating and sharing your congratulations with the students. It's really great to see. So last but not least, we are coming up on our final presentation with the wonderful Ashley Ross. Are you ready, Ashley? Okay, great.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. All right. So my name is Ashley Ross, and I am a graduating student in the photography program. And so I currently reside in Oakland, California, but I moved to the Bay Area specifically to attend CCA. But I'm originally from the South Bay of Los Angeles, Torrance, California, to be more specific. I chose a photo of Redondo Beach because I feel like growing up in Los Angeles, it's kind of like, which beach did you kind of, grow up in? So Redondo Beach was my beach. And so I am an only child. I was raised by two artistic parents themselves, which I believe has greatly influenced my decision-making and, wanting to pursue an art career. And so my first interest in art started with painting and drawing and, the various different art classes one might take, throughout their schooling. It wasn't until my senior year of high school that I took a photography class that sparked a new interest in an unfamiliar medium. I actually began to like it more than painting and drawing because I felt it gave me more tools to accurately represent my thoughts and ideas. And so my influences and inspirations really vary. My main influence in my art practice will always be coming from my own personal experiences in life. When I made the decision to come to CCA and pursue photography, one of the first things I did, because I didn't really know that much about photography, was look up who looked like me in photography. I felt I needed to see that because when I first came to CCA, I felt very isolated attending an institution where I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me, and specifically within my program as well. So definitely Reflections in Black by Deborah Willis, which was also one of the first photo books I've ever picked up, was a huge inspiration. And really helped me to not only see myself within the medium photography, but believe that I also had a story to tell through photography. And so, of course, as I continued my studies, I began to learn more about different Black photographers, such as Roy DeCarava. Outside of his technical mastery of the medium, I really appreciated seeing a photographer photograph Black people in a very humanistic way. And also artists like Latoya Ruby Frazier and even Theastra Gates are artists that I'm also inspired by. I appreciate these artists for their ability to be able to navigate multiple spaces within their art practice, tackling personal narratives and projects that pertain to larger social issues. And so throughout the majority of my time at CCA has been really investigating my relationship to photography. It has ranged from street photography to portraiture. And, as I grew more in the program, it's ranged to personal narratives, which leads me to my thesis work. October 27th, 2003 is a body of work that explores religious indoctrination, familial legacy, and identity in relation to my spiritual and mental development within the confines of a religious upbringing. Inspired by W.E.B. Du Bois' analysis of the Black American experience and him questioning what it means to be Black and American, with this body of work, my question is focused on who gets to constitute the spiritual value of a Black individual and whether that spiritual value can coexist within environments of divisiveness and trauma. Informed by my own personal experiences as a child being raised in the Apostolic Pentecostal Christian Church, October 27, 2003 is a visual interpretation of an inner dialogue about my religious childhood experiences and how it conflicts with an understanding of myself. The title, October 27, 2003, is used as a metaphor for both beginning and an end, into a child's innocuous understanding of life as they know it and the beginning of a spiritual rebirth. With this body of work, I'm seeking to question my own spiritual value and how that can be in conflict with my identity. Through the use of visual metaphors and allegorical portraiture, I'm seeking to investigate how growing up with stringent belief systems has contributed to the body and mind, trying to further understand how our traumas, familiar legacies, and experiences contribute to our psyche. And so when I first started conceptualizing this body of work, my focus initially began with exploring my religious upbringing in relation to my family. So what you're seeing right now is my parents. These are old Polaroid photographs of them when they actually first began dating. And so at this point in time, I was contemplating what is legacy and how does it define who we eventually become. I was attempting to not only process my past religious experiences, but understand how it relates to my parents' relationship and the overall absence of legacy within my familial lineage. And so some of the questions that are driving this thesis are, what life full of sin can a child repent from? Is the emphasis of the spiritual rebirth as a child a prerequisite to hopefully living a life of sinlessness? And so the significance of the date is influenced by a certificate I received as a child after being baptized, given a spiritual birthday, and then declared that I was given a birth experience. The idea of being a child and indoctrinated with complicated spiritual concepts and religious doctrines, such as being born again, is one of the main things that is driving this body of work. So like I said in some previous slides, I did grow up in a specific denomination and section within Christianity. That's main focus is, and main doctrine is centered around being born again and, being baptized. And so what I'm, speaking to in this body of work is that, complex understanding of, trying to rationalize being born again as a young child and that age. And so my thesis has expanded to not only investigating past experiences, but also exploring how past informs our present. I view it as a conversation that I'm having with myself, that I'm interpreting visually, an inner turmoil that I'm constantly ruminating about my childhood experiences and a continued conflicted sense of identity. And so I'm also thinking about how this further coincides with themes centering around duality and double consciousness. You're raised with a set of beliefs, and then as you mature and evolve as a person, you begin to feel these ideas and beliefs in conflict with your evolving existence. And so what's next for me is my next step to continue on this thesis and expanding some of the themes and ideas into an artist book, which I'm currently beginning work on. With the artist book, I'm hoping to dive deeper into the historical elements of the specific doctrine I was raised in, family archives and themes around double consciousness in relation to my own childhood experience. And so this to the left is from the archive, and to the right is an older mock-up of the book that I was working on. And so thank you so much for listening to me. I want to take time to thank Aspen, of course, and to all the other faculty members that I've taken class with. If Alice is still in there, thank you, Alice. Thank you so much. I've taken class with you and you've been amazing. So thank you.
I was muted. Thank you so much, Ashley. It's just such powerful work, and it's been such an honor to get to work with you over the years at CCA. And I just, from the moment you walked in class, whatever that was, 2 or 3 years ago, you've just had this depth of inquiry, depth of questions that you've been asking, that it's so inspiring to be your teacher. So thank you for that wonderful presentation. I can't remember whose turn we're on. Teachers falling apart. I think, Lauren, I'm going to invite you to kick us off here.
Sure thing. Wow. Thank you for sharing that work. Yeah, I think depth is a great way to talk about it. I was so impressed by just all the context around how those photographs are made, your research, your thinking, your writing, even the way that you present your inquiry. I really think adds to the experience of viewing your photos or your book, or wherever you decide to take this work. I think I was particularly drawn to the photographs in the series that had abstraction, had traces of that story, but were more intriguing and had me wanting to fill in the blanks and make the connections. And I think it's interesting that how you have all these different ways that you're exploring the subject, that there's just so much texture there, and a lot of those details that come through in the way that you tell the story and in the photographs themselves, like the way that leaves were coming into the pages of the Bible, or the ripples in the water, or the way that the fabric drapes over the body. Yeah, I think that you've done some beautiful work exploring this subject that's personal, and still has a lot of connection, I think, to a lot of people. And I think that there's probably a lot more that you can explore if that's something that you want to continue to look into.
Ashley, congratulations. I really, really, really enjoyed hearing you talk, and sitting with the images that you shared with us, and kind of finding myself wanting more. I found myself in this kind of swell of thinking, listening to you talk, and there was this presence of water, and I thought how powerful water is to the Black diaspora story, and not only to your personal story, but as water, as we crossed the water in the Middle Passage, and that water was this passage, to death and to birth as well, and how it kind of resonates within this kind of spiritual moment that happened to you on 10/27/03, and then I'm swirling around kind of African spirituality and the references that I also saw in the work in terms of this kind of presence of white, and how white clothing is especially on women is connected through the Caribbean and back to the continent. And kind of how that sits with my own research right now, and thinking about Obeah in Jamaica, and kind of beginning to understand that we have this story within ourselves, which you were talking about, this duality, but how our ancestors had a different story, and had different learnings, and how beautiful it is to kind of begin to decolonize ourselves and connect with that story. So congratulations. I had a question about some of the people in your work and how you kind of approached it, especially this young girl. I was really intrigued if you wanted to talk more about who this person is, or I would just love to learn more. So
yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your feedback. It's nice to see you again. So yeah, the little girl actually represents me.
I just want to say I can't hear you too well. Just no. I just wanted, because I'm super keen to hear it. I just can't. So.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, perfect.
I think it's because my paper was covering one of the speakers. So, but yeah, so the little girl represents me basically, and I'm kind of having, like I said, like a, visually interpreting like this inner dialogue that I've been having with myself regarding a lot of these themes. And so, I actually began the work with the other images. That was my first introduction to, getting to this thesis. And then I started to really get into kind of going back to my child mindset and trying to, investigate. And as I was writing while I was developing this thesis, I was thinking about just being a child, being confronted with a lot of those concepts. And so that kind of made me want to, revisit that mindset if I could, even though I'm an adult now, but also kind of investigate that with, another child as well. And she was an amazing model too. So, but yeah, she really just represents me, and being young with, my favorite image is one of the first images I showed called Facing Giants, standing in front of a church. It is a church. And so, but I'm also thinking about, how big that institution is in relation to the child, but also kind of like just the complexity of just a lot of, what religion has, versus within, the contrast of a young child. So yeah, hopefully that answered.
Absolutely. There was also another question that I had, well, maybe more of an observation, certainly when there was a figure in the water and kind of just floating on the top. And I kind of, again, found myself thinking about this in-between state of kind of, half emerged, half submerged, and how beautiful a metaphor that feels like for the Black diaspora in terms of, how we kind of find our identities.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely when I was dealing with like the things around baptism, in my research, submersion is like a really huge part of, the reason for baptism as well. And so I was definitely thinking about, kind of like that halfway point, so thank you for pointing it out.
If these works, I'm trying to picture in a gallery setting in normal circumstances, what scale do you envision for some of these works?
I envision it really big. I feel like it's important for them to be really big, because I'm dealing with, I feel like each image, like there's a lot, it's very dense. There's so many metaphors, there's so many different, a lot of information that you can get from like a lot of the images within themselves. And I think that having a larger scale and having the ability to really sit and kind of be, you know, completely, you know, I guess, just surrounded by that image, I think is really important, and would suit the images a lot better than for them to be smaller. So I definitely envision it at a larger scale. I think one thing about COVID and what it has done is it's unfortunately kind of taken out the physical relationship you can have to the work. So there's something about being in the dark room or being in, you know, the digital dark room we have at CCA and printing the work and kind of standing over it, looking at it, you know, that I feel like it's a relationship to the work. And so I've been viewing it digitally for a long time. So I definitely want to, you know, I'm thinking about more so like when the opportunity comes to, you know, have gallery shows, think about installation as well, especially the Polaroid photographs that I had with my parents, that's resting over. Those are actually the passages that I had in the water. You know, when I think of ways, how do I translate that more into like a physical object as well? So thinking about physicality as well, thinking about space, you know, I definitely, you know, want to continue with this and hopefully can create installations. So.
I thought there was something interested in the zigzag of the hair on one of the images with the girl with the white ribbons, and I kind of just wanted to ask about that and if that and the particular meaning behind it.
So with that image, so basically, I mean, like I said, she represents me, and so that's just a hairstyle that I used to always wear. My mom, for some reason, really liked me in pigtails and ribbons, and so that's really what you know, that's how I would look when I was around that age, and so I chose to focus up close on that because that's such a representation of just how I looked during that time. And then she also is, you know, looking up once again at, you know, this kind of representation. I shot at multiple different churches as well, but this one specific church, you know, I didn't feel like it was, I guess, necessary to just pick one church. I feel like, you know, the church has many different, you know, meanings within itself, you know, and so that's what I was thinking about with that image. You know, once again, facing giants and facing a lot of these complex questions and issues and you know, building within itself. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ashley, for sharing that, and you know, for Erica and Lauren for your great questions today and your thoughtful comments and being in conversation with the students. It's hard to believe we're kind of wrapping up our time here. To all the students who presented today, you really just did an excellent job. You spoke so well of your work. I'm so proud of all of you. I bet you're all relieved, but you really did an excellent job. You know, on behalf of the photography program, we're really so proud of you. And for those who joined us, thank you so much. Thank you for being here and witnessing this excellent work. I noticed a lot of the students put their, you know, Instagram handles and website links and stuff. But students, if you want to drop those in the chat, feel free to do that. I also want to point everyone towards the CCA exhibitions page on our website. We'll have an archived recording of this conversation so you can watch back. And then there's also BFA thesis showcases on the exhibitions website as well, so you can see a little bit more of their work. And I will point you all, put this in the chat right now too. There are more BFA thesis conversations coming up. Quite a stacked schedule across all the fine arts majors. And I want to invite you all back next week on April the 5th, another Monday from 5 to 7 p.m. We'll have the rest of the photography majors will be presenting their work. So please, you're welcome to join us again. And yeah, wonderful work. Thank you so much. Thank you, Erica and Lauren. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Jamie and Brenda's, for all the behind the scenes support today.
Thank you for the invitation, Aspen.
Yeah, and I don't know, I don't want to go crazy, but people unmute and clap. Let's do it. Let's go crazy.
Congratulations, everyone. Woo-hoo.
Good job, everybody.
Yeah, congrats everyone. It was fantastic.
You're gonna love these chats if you guys haven't seen them yet, students. It's so good. Good to have all this. Thank you, Elaine. Thanks, Nicole. I'm just hanging out in here. I'm soaking it up. I love the Love Fest. It's really, it's just so enjoyable. Thanks, Ashley. That was great.
I would totally hang out, but I am suffering a little bit from my second dose of the vaccine. So I will see everyone. Congrats, really. Take care. We'll speak soon.
Thanks, Nelson. Feel better.
Thank you.
Yeah, feel better.
Thank you.